You can't fill a glass with clean water if the bottom is lined with poison. That's what I learned, not from books or lectures, but from living with a mind that was quietly eating me alive while I smiled in public. See, most people think life happens outside of them. They think circumstances shape who they are, that joy or peace are handed out by fate, that luck determines the shape of their days. But what if I told you, the loudest thing shaping your life isn't out there, it's the voice you whisper to yourself when no one's around? What grows inside a garden where every day without fail someone sows weeds? What kind of life blooms from a mind that's rehearsed fear, fed resentment, and watered self-doubt? Can you truly expect sunlight in your life when every window in your mind is painted with shadows? I've lived both. I've lived with a mind that punished me for every step forward, that replayed mistakes like broken records and never let the music of hope come through. And I've also lived, slowly, intentionally, with a mind I chose to rewire, not perfectly, not overnight, but patiently, the way rivers carve through stone with quiet persistence. And here's what I've come to know. Your thoughts, they don't just visit. They build homes, and soon they raise families, belief systems, habits, identity. If your thoughts are angry, your life will start to feel like a battlefield. If your thoughts are fearful, your days will look like locked doors. But if your thoughts are kind, steady, clear, then slowly, quietly, your life becomes a place worth living in. Let me ask you gently, when was the last time you listened to your mind and it sounded like a friend? This isn't about fake positivity. This isn't about slapping affirmations over deep wounds or pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about choosing in the stillness of your day to plant something different. A thought that doesn't destroy you, a belief that lifts you, a word to yourself that doesn't bruise your spirit. Because no one gets handed a beautiful life. We all build it one thought at a time. If your mind is a garden, are you planting poison or peace? And if you catch yourself feeding the same story, I'm not enough, nothing ever changes, what's the point? Remember, a thought repeated becomes a truth believed, and a believed truth becomes a life lived. But you are allowed to change the story. You can begin again, not out loud, not dramatically, but quietly. Today, with a single better thought, something as soft as maybe I'm worth more than I've believed. That's how it starts. Because here's the truth. You can't live a positive life with a negative mind. The two don't speak the same language. They don't grow in the same soil. You are not broken. You are just rehearsing the wrong thoughts. Change your mental rehearsal and the stage of your life changes with it. Start where you are. Speak to yourself the way you needed someone to speak to you when you were younger. Gently, honestly, hopefully. Because when your mind becomes a home, your life becomes a place of peace. The thoughts you feed today become the life you live tomorrow. There's a quiet law that governs every life, though it isn't written in any book or carved into stone. It isn't taught in school, but it's as real as gravity. And it's this: the thoughts you feed today become the life you live tomorrow. Most people don't realize they're feeding anything. They go through their day with a mind on autoplay, thinking the same thoughts, telling themselves the same stories, responding the same way to the same triggers. And slowly, those thoughts, quiet, unnoticed, constant, start shaping their entire world. It doesn't happen all at once. That's what makes it dangerous. One anxious thought doesn't ruin your peace. One moment of doubt won't erase your dream. But like drops of water wearing down a stone, repetition builds permanence. Thought by thought, belief by belief, your mind becomes a lens. And that lens begins to color everything. Ask yourself gently, what kind of thoughts do I keep feeding? Are they hopeful or heavy? Are they compassionate or critical? Are they thoughts that make space to breathe, or ones that tighten your chest before the day even begins? It's easy to think that thoughts are harmless. After all, they're just in your head, right? But look close. The thoughts you think shape the decisions you make, and the decisions you make shape the direction of your life. If you constantly think, nothing ever works out for me, how likely are you to try again? If you silently repeat, I'm not good enough, how deeply will you love or allow yourself to be loved? And if your inner voice is always rehearsing fear, how far can you really go? A garden left untended grows wild with weeds, not because weeds are stronger, but because they're easier. They don't need permission to grow. They thrive on neglect, and so do negative thoughts. But feed different thoughts, intentionally, daily, and the landscape begins to change. Start small, start simple. A thought like, maybe I'm allowed to grow, can open a door where there was once only a wall. A thought like, I've survived every hard day so far, can soften fear and strengthen resolve. A thought like peace is possible today can interrupt a storm before it builds. This isn't about pretending. It's not about forcing joy or avoiding truth. It's about choosing to feed thoughts that nourish instead of drain, to repeat beliefs that build instead of break, to become a gardener of your own mind. And what does that really mean? It means paying attention to your inner climate the way a farmer watches the sky. It means noticing when certain thoughts make you shrink, and choosing, kindly, to plant something better. It means knowing that even when storms come, and they will, the soil is still good. You don't need perfect thoughts, you just need better ones, one by one, day by day. Because a beautiful life doesn't begin with big events, it begins with small thoughts, repeated often enough to become habits, and strong enough to become value. And soon, those values begin to shape your days begin to shape your story, and your story becomes your life. So ask yourself, not with judgment, but with quiet honesty, what am I feeding my future? Because tomorrow always begins in your mind, and you are the one planting the seeds. You are not your fears, you are the one listening to them. Fear has a voice, not loud but persistent. It doesn't yell, but it whispers just enough to make you hesitate. And if you don't know who you are apart from that voice, it can start to feel like the voice is you. But here's the quiet truth. You are not your fears, you are the one listening to them. That one shift, that single insight, can change the course of a life. Because fear isn't always wrong, sometimes it protects us. It's the part of you that tells you not to touch fire, not to walk too close to the edge. It has its place, but left unchecked it overreaches. It stops warning, and starts controlling. It begins to build cages out of what-ifs, and locks them with stories that sound like, I'm not ready, I'm not worthy, or I'll fail again. And when fear becomes your narrator, even the most beautiful dreams sound dangerous. But listen close. Beneath the voice of fear, there is a listener, a witness. That part of you that notices the fear but doesn't become it. That's the real you. Have you ever paused before a decision, heart racing, thoughts swirling, and felt like two parts of you were in conversation? One part trembling with doubt, and another quieter part just watching. That watcher is your awareness, and awareness is freedom. Fear thrives in confusion, when you mistake its voice for your own. But once you can say, this is fear talking, something powerful happens. You reclaim choice. You realize fear can ride in the car, but it doesn't get to hold the steering wheel. This doesn't mean we banish fear forever. No one does. It means we stop confusing the weather inside us with our identity. Rain can pour, winds can howl, but you are not the storm. You are the sky it passes through. And when you live like that as the witness, not the weather, life opens up. You can feel fear and still move forward. You can doubt and still decide. You can hear the voice that says, what if I'm not and gently answer, that's just a thought. It's not the truth, because fear is just a signal. It points, but it doesn't command. It offers stories, but you choose whether to believe them. Most people wait for fear to leave before they act, but fear doesn't leave when you wait. It leaves when you walk forward anyway. It's like a shadow. It stretches long when you stand still, but when you move toward the light, it shrinks behind you. So ask yourself, what would I do if I didn't believe this fear? What would change if I remembered that I'm the one listening, not the voice itself? And perhaps most importantly, what part of me is deeper than fear? Because there is such a part, a quiet center, a place within you that fear cannot touch. You've felt it in moments of stillness, in the calm after tears, in the breath you take before deciding to try again. That's the place you return to, not to fight fear, but to outgrow it. Remember, fear is a visitor. You are the home. So the next time fear comes knocking, don't slam the door, don't invite it in for dinner either. Just nod gently and say, I hear you, but I'm not living according to your map anymore, because the life you long for, the one filled with depth, joy and meaning, doesn't lie on the other side of fear. It lives alongside it. You just have to remember who you are, not the one listening. What you repeat in your mind, you rehearse in your life. Life isn't just shaped by what happens to you, it's shaped by what you rehearse when nothing is happening at all. Most people think of rehearsals as something actors or musicians do. But the truth is, we're all rehearsing something, every day, in our minds, quietly, relentlessly. The question is, what are you rehearsing? Because what you repeat in your mind, you rehearse in your life. Think about it. The human mind doesn't wait for permission. It repeats what's familiar. Whether it's pain, worry, criticism, or old conversations, the mind replays. It turns a single moment into a pattern. A sentence someone said years ago becomes a loop. A failure becomes a warning. A doubt becomes a daily script. And over time, those rehearsals stop sounding like rehearsals. They start sounding like reality. If you constantly rehearse thoughts like "I'm not ready," then readiness will always feel out of reach. If you quietly rehearse, "People like me never succeed," then, even when opportunity knocks, you'll hesitate. Not because it isn't real, but because your mind never practiced saying yes. If you repeat, "Why does this always happen to me?" your brain will search for ways to prove it's true. The mind is obedient like that. It rehearses what you give it, and then it gets better at it. That's the thing about repetition. It doesn't ask if the story is helpful. It only asks if it's familiar. So if you keep feeding your mind fear, it gets better at being afraid. If you keep feeding it guilt, it learns to carry shame with skill. But feed it grace, and it learns compassion. Feed it courage, and it starts standing taller. Feed it truth, and you begin to walk lighter. Your inner life becomes the dress rehearsal for your outer world. Let's look at it this way. What if your mind were a stage, and every repeated thought was a rehearsal for who you'd be when the curtain rose? Would you want the world to see that version? Would you want your children, your partner, your future self to live in the story you're rehearsing today? This isn't about judgment, it's about recognition. The most powerful transformations begin not with force, but with awareness. The first step is simply noticing. What thought am I rehearsing right now? Noticing is enough to begin. You don't have to fix everything at once. You don't have to shout over the noise in your head. Just begin by hearing it and choosing differently. Because here's a soft truth. Every single thought is a cue, a prompt, an invitation, and each time you respond with the same old reaction, you're strengthening the habit. But each time you choose a slightly better thought, even just 1 degree better, you're writing a new script. A mind that rehearses peace, even when it's scared, will start to find calm in the chaos. A mind that rehearses gratitude, even when life is hard, will start to see beauty in the cracks. A mind that rehearses forgiveness, even in small ways, will begin to lighten its own load. It's not performance, it's practice. Quiet, daily, human practice. So ask yourself, what kind of life am I rehearsing when no one's watching? Because when the moment comes, when you're asked to lead, to love, to rise, to let go, you won't rise to the occasion. You'll fall to the level of your practice. And practice, my friend, begins with thought. So if you want to change your life, change your mental rehearsal. Feed your mind the kind of dialogue you'd want your life to echo, and repeat, not perfectly, but faithfully, like breath, like prayer. Because what you repeat in your mind, you rehearse in your life, and eventually you live the part you've been practicing all along. Negativity is not honesty, it's just a habit left unchallenged. There's a quiet lie that many of us carry, a lie we mistake for truth, simply because we've heard it so often in our own minds. It says, "I'm just being realistic," or "I'm not negative, I'm honest." But look closer. Beneath that reasoning is often a habit, not a truth. Because negativity isn't honesty, it's just a habit left unchallenged, a reflex of the mind, a learned lens. And like any habit, it can become so familiar we stop noticing we're doing it. We wake up, and before our feet even touch the ground, the thoughts begin. This day is going to be hard. Nothing ever works out. People don't really care. I'm not doing enough. It doesn't scream, it murmurs. It's the background noise of a mind that's forgotten it can think differently. And the more we repeat it, the more truth it seems to hold. But repetition isn't proof. Familiarity isn't fact. So let's ask, gently, when did we start calling self-doubt honesty? When did we confuse a heavy inner voice with wisdom? It happens slowly, usually after enough disappointments, enough days where things went wrong, enough people who left, or words that wounded. The mind builds a shield. It learns to expect the worst, not because it's wise, but because it thinks pain will hurt less if it's anticipated. But here's the deeper cost. In trying to protect ourselves from disappointment, we also shut the door on joy. We stop hoping out loud. We downplay our excitement. We scan every good thing for flaws, and we call it just being careful. But there's a difference between being careful and being closed. There's a difference between being thoughtful and being trapped by your own thoughts. Negativity shrinks your life, not because you're weak, but because the habit quietly convinces you that playing small is safer than getting hurt again. But the mind is plastic, not in the artificial sense, but in the scientific one. It can be reshaped, rewired, retrained. A thought you've rehearsed for 20 years can be challenged today, not rejected harshly, just gently questioned. Ask it, is this really the only way to see this? Is this belief helping me live well, or is it just an old reflex I haven't replaced yet? Negativity doesn't make you wise, bitterness doesn't make you strong, and expecting the worst doesn't protect your heart. It just hardens it. We often think changing our mindset means pretending life is easy, but that's not it. It means choosing to respond instead of react, choosing to see possibilities even while acknowledging pain, choosing to be rooted, not jaded. Try this. Next time a negative thought arrives, pause. Don't fight it. Don't feed it either. Just recognize it as a pattern, a groove in the record, and then ask yourself, what would a more generous thought sound like here? Maybe it's something as simple as, this is hard, but I'm not powerless, or I've struggled before and I'm still here, or even, this fear doesn't have to make the decision for me. These aren't delusions, they're strength, spoken softly, because true honesty includes hope, and real realism includes resilience. The world isn't asking you to pretend everything is perfect. It's asking you to live with your eyes open, not just to what's wrong, but to what's possible. You don't owe your past the duty of being negative forever. You don't have to honor old pain by keeping it alive in your thoughts. You get to challenge the habit. You get to choose again, because your thoughts are not your fate. They're just the road you're walking. And if the path has grown dark, light another way. The habit of negativity may be deep, but your power to choose is deeper still. Peace doesn't shout. It waits quietly for you to choose it. Peace is never the loudest voice in the room. It doesn't demand attention. It doesn't slam doors or raise its hand. It doesn't fight for space. It waits. It waits in the quiet corners of your life, behind the noise, beneath the busyness, beyond the endless scroll of your mind. It waits with patience, not pressure, and it speaks, not with volume, but with presence, because peace doesn't shout. It waits quietly for you to choose it. Most of us don't notice peace because we're looking for it in the wrong places. We think it comes after achievement, after everything is sorted, after the house is clean, the inbox is empty, the debts are paid, the heart is healed. But peace isn't the result of a perfect life. It's the rhythm of a present one. It's not waiting at the end of your to-do list. It's already here, underneath all the noise you've learned to carry. You see, the world is loud. Life pulls in a dozen directions. There's pressure to produce, to please, to prove, and when the world is loud, we often think we need to match its volume. We think inner calm is something we have to chase or earn, but peace can't be chased. It can only be chosen, and the choice usually happens in a moment so small, most people miss it. Like the moment you pause before reacting, the breath you take before saying something you can't unsay, the silence you let stretch out before filling it with distraction. Peace isn't passive. It's powerful, but it doesn't compete for your attention. It knows its worth, and it knows it won't be found in your next success or someone else's approval. It's already inside you, patiently waiting for you to return. Ask yourself, when was the last time I chose peace? Not because I had nothing going on, but because I decided I no longer wanted to live in a war with myself. That's where peace begins. Not after the storm, but in the middle of it. When you sit down inside your own life and say, let me rest here for a moment. Let me breathe where I am. Peace isn't perfection, it's permission. Permission to not answer every call, to not prove your worth with every task, to not rush your healing just because the world tells you to. It's the quiet courage to say, this moment is enough for now. I don't need to solve it all to be okay right here. We often chase peace like it's out there, waiting in someone else's version of happiness. But it isn't out there. It's in the pause, the breath, the choice to return to yourself without judgment. You won't always feel it. That's okay. Some days peace feels distant, but distance doesn't mean absence. Just because you can't hear the whisper doesn't mean it stopped speaking. Peace is always available, but it's never pushy. You can find it in a walk without your phone, in watching the wind move through trees, in closing your eyes and simply being, without needing to improve anything. The more you choose peace, the more it rises to meet you. It becomes easier to find, easier to hold, easier to return to when life pulls you away, but it always starts the same way, with your choice. So the next time life gets loud, when the world feels like it's rushing past you, and your mind fills with pressure, panic or performance, remember, peace won't shout over the noise, but it will be there, waiting, patient, gentle, quiet, and all you have to do is choose. A better life begins with a better thought, whispered, not shouted. Change doesn't always begin with a breakthrough. Sometimes it begins with a whisper, not a loud declaration, not a thunderous vow, just a quiet thought that gently says, what if it could be different? That's how it starts. The better life you long for, not with the world changing around you but with a shift so small inside you, that at first you almost miss it, because a better life doesn't begin by force, it begins with a better thought, whispered, not shouted. You've probably seen people try to change their lives by shouting goals into the air, grand visions, big promises, all noise, all fire. But what happens after the fire dies down? What remains when the crowd is gone? When the energy fades, what remains is thought. And the most powerful change doesn't come from willpower, it comes from what you're quietly rehearsing in your own mind when no one's listening. Because thought is the seed of everything. The way you speak, the way you walk into a room, the way you hold your posture, the way you respond to kindness, the way you receive love or push it away, all of it begins in the quiet workshop of your thinking. We think our circumstances shape our lives, but more often it's the small thoughts, believed and repeated, that build the architecture of who we become. So what kind of thoughts live inside your mind? Are they loud with self-criticism? Are they filled with what-ifs, should-haves, and not enough? Or is there room, even just a small opening, for something softer to emerge? Not a lie, not forced positivity, but a better thought, a thought rooted in truth and tenderness. Something like, I can begin again, or I am allowed to heal, or even, I don't have to stay who I was yesterday. These thoughts don't yell, they don't demand the spotlight, they wait patiently for you to believe them, and when you do, even for a second, something shifts. You speak up when you would have stayed silent. You rest when you would have pushed. You try again when the old you would have quit. All because of a thought. A small, better thought, whispered into the quiet. Here's the thing most people never realize. Your life doesn't change all at once. It changes in layers, subtle layers. The thought becomes a belief. The belief becomes a pattern. The pattern becomes a behavior, and the behavior becomes a life. But it starts with the whisper. So be mindful of what you're whispering to yourself, because your inner voice becomes your outer world. If the whispers are cruel, your life will shrink in shame. If they're fear-driven, your dreams will retreat. But if they're patient, kind, and grounded in possibility, slowly, softly, your life begins to reflect them. This is the great quiet power we all carry. We get to choose what we tell ourselves. We get to begin again, one better thought at a time. You don't have to shout to change your life. You don't have to convince the world, or even be fully convinced yourself. You just have to begin, softly, faithfully, because a better life doesn't come all at once. It arrives like dawn, slow, golden, quiet, and it begins with a whisper in the dark. I can live differently.